recording this session. Okay, here we go. So, good morning. I will try to walk you through our firmware solution, our Exinda appliance, as to show you the benefits and especially the way that we try to handle traffic shaping, acceleration, prioritization of traffic. So first of all, if you have any questions, ask them while we're on the screen so I can immediately take a deep dive. So first of all, when you log on to an Exinda appliance, you'll get a benefits page or dashboard review, which will show you the main benefits that we are seeing or applications that we are seeing in the network. So for example, visibility, like I explained, visibility is, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of optimizing your WAN links, your internet links, because if you do not know what's on there, you cannot take control of it. So we will show you these application groups on the inbound and outbound. We will show you the link utilization and some extra information like reduction. But if you see the visibility, I want more details to see, well, there's a lot of web and a lot of file services, but all the rest is very limited. So I want more details. So drill down, click on more details, and then you'll see an extensive list of all the application groups that we saw and pay attention in the last 60 minutes of this day. You can change this to what you prefer to see. This is a demo environment. This has been booted, I think 15 minutes ago, so it doesn't make really sense to go back last 30 days as information. And also at the right-hand side, and that's on each and every report, you get an immediately printable report, export to a CSV report or a PDF with the filters applied. So, but then again, I see file services is really high today for some reason, and that's a question. So I want to know what's going on. So I click on file services, drill down even more into detail, and I see that in my network, FTP and CIFS are running with, if you want even more details, and the delays, the round trip time, how many flows, even the efficiency on TCP settings. But even then, I'm not happy to see so much FTP. So who is doing FTP? Just drill down even deeper, and I will see 2 IP addresses in this scenario that are doing FTP. So very easy, very, how do you say it? Great overview on what is going on in the network. So if there's something wrong, you can drill down very easily. Remember, I talked about, so let's go back to the dashboard, about the Exinda recommendation engine. This is the blue bar on the top. Like I said, I just booted these machines in a demo virtual environment. That's why the 3 recommendations that are in there are all the same and don't really make sense because it's just new. But this would typically say, administrator, we saw application XYZ for the first time in 30 days. Do we need to create a rule? Do you need to create a rule? And so on and so forth. So those are possibilities that you could see. Then, for example, when I do a POC, I install the box at the customer to start demoing the box. The first thing I will do, and once again, the key thing, is to go to the real-time monitor. You need to be sure that when you install the appliance, everything still works. And this is a real-time between quotes because this is a 10-second snapshot of every second to go into technical details on the conversations. And then you'll see, and this is important why for the real-time monitor, that the external IPs are actually internal IPs, Why do I say it's important? I've came across a lot of customers that by accident swap the cables around, but then the magic cannot happen. So that it's very important. Uh, of course, in a MPLS network, the external IP can be seen as help again, a private IP address, because on the remote end, it's still a private IP address. So don't really focus on my end. Yellow colored bar are accelerated connections. Blue bars are proxied connections. But as you can see, uh, in the URL section, we will show you which URL was behind the HTTP session. The FTP and CIFS will show you we have Lotus nodes. Even Gmail, so even if it's encrypted, we will report on which application we saw that is doing the encryption. So very focused on layer 7 and very easy to spot what is going on. And the big advantage is we will always put at the top the high consuming user or IP address. So for instance, if something is blocking your network, it will always be the first one in this list. So this is our real-time view. You can view the real-time in conversations, which for me is the most important one, but some people like to see how the applications are spread in the network. So we see a distribution that HTTP is, well, almost 40% of all traffic is HTTP, FTP is a little bit less, and so on. You can have it if it's based on Active Directory and whatever hosts and IP addresses. You can have reduction or application response, all different ways on viewing real time. After the real time, we can have, so I'm still talking about the first phase in the POC. I've installed the box. I'm at the customer the first day of the POC. After we verified and real time monitor that everything's still working, I will go, for example, to the application report and have a close look. As you can see, this is where I booted the device approximately. I will have a look and see, okay, we have a top 10 on these applications. Does this make sense to you, Mr. Customer? If he says, well, I didn't know Lotus Notes was still on my network, then you're pretty sure you can help him by selling a box, because we already shown that Lotus Notes has 13 meg of traffic in his network, so is consuming bandwidth. But even more important is the remaining traffic. So remaining traffic is the group of all applications not in top 10. But all applications not in top 10 is already in our top 7, for example, in my scenario. So which means that, okay, there is a lot of what we call shadow IT, shadow applications running in the network. For example, I come to the office, you invite me to your office. I ask you, because I don't have a Russian data plan, I will ask you to connection to the Wi-Fi. You give me one, then I will add roughly 20 applications on my iPhone that are now on your network, also consuming bandwidth to the internet. So if I would go down, I will see the entire list of all applications that we saw on the network. So Gmail, Yahoo, Facebook, pages and pages of applications in this scenario. Again, remember, visibility is very important to us. Okay, I see Amazon Cloud. Who is doing Amazon Cloud? I click on the filter, go back up. Okay, I see there's really Amazon Cloud. Click on it, and you will see these two IP addresses are using Amazon Cloud. Again, last 60 minutes. If you want to change it. If you want a PDF report, create the PDF report. Again, drill down on what's very important. So for example, if I would go to real-time monitor, I would see that, well, this one is, let's take the FTP one. This one is really using a lot of FTP. Just copy the IP address. Go, for example, to the application lists, the hosts list. I will type his IP address, filter on it, And then I would see what this guy is doing. Filter, sorry, up. And then you see indeed the FTP that is his top application. Unclassified, just an FYI, because I see it here, are applications grouped together which we didn't identify yet, which means they're only based on the TCP or UDP ports. As you can see in the real-time monitor, we by default have roughly 3,000 applications, so not all. It's updated every so often. But if we do not know the application, we would still report the TCP numbers, which is a huge difference compared, for example, the Bluecode Packeteer or Semantic Packeteer, Packet Shaper now. If for them, if you do not create the application, they do not report on it. We still report on whatever we see. Very important. Other, for me, very interesting reports is the subnet-based report. Why? If your customer has more remote offices, this becomes very important because then you have a view on all the remote offices, like private net is the head office, or LAN is the head office. Then you've got Los Angeles. We've got some differentiation on mail intranet server with, again, a top tree. But if you want, just click on LAN, which is, in my case, the local network in my head office. I know, but I know there's traffic in there. I can see the applications in the subnet LAN. But if I want to go even deeper, then I would click HTTP. And then I have a report, and pay attention, only HTTP on the subnet that I defined called LAN network, which I think can be very, very useful to have all this information. So day one is finished now. We've installed the appliance. Everything is monitoring the network. You say, well, I will come back in 2-3 days or a week. It depends who and when everybody is available. But then all these reports that I just shown you will help you in configuring how you should react to traffic flows. And that's then, hang on, I'm waiting for the connection. My Wi-Fi is not the best one here. And then we will create the policy base. So by default, this, let me just delete it. This would be the scenario at your customer. And let's save it, restart, so nothing will happen. A restart is immediate, by the way. So this is what will be installed at your customer. Nothing will be shaped. Then what I typically do is I will launch the wizard just to help me create a bunch of rules. I will tweak it, but it helps you win a lot of time. Click on the various questions, enable optimization control. Yes, I only have one connection, and the actual connecting speeds on your connection to the internet or MPLS network or VPN network. Whatever. Apply. Let's go back to the configuration. And you'll see that I now have two groups of rules. A circuit 10 is, and let me open the edit, is the actual link that we are applying our rules to. For example, let's say you have two links to the internet. One link is the primary link with high speed, and a second link, which is an ADSL connection, whatever, to be a backup if the other one goes down. Then you would have two circuits, because then you would be able to create two different rule sets. So if it's a high speed, then of course you will allow each and every service to take more bandwidth. If it's low speed, then you would maybe prioritize only critical applications and, for instance, kill Facebook while being on the backup link. And then you could say, on this bridge, I will apply my my rules for, in this scenario, my 1 links. So then after circuit 10, 10 is just a number to be able to go up and down the policy tree. So because we are like a firewall top down, if you match a policy, you will enter the next line. So if we see traffic on bridge 2, then we go into the rules of circuit 10. And then a virtual circuit is how you would logically separate rules. So an example is I would create a virtual circuit for every remote office I have. Remote office 1 is a virtual circuit, remote office 2 is a virtual circuit 3, and so on. You could say I will group each and all the remote offices together in a virtual circuit, and then a virtual circuit for the internet connection. All up to you. It's a logical separation of rules. And then within that virtual circuit, we have our actual policies, which are grouped typically by an application or by an application group, IP address, VLAN, whatever you want. So if I would look at the filter applied to the 1 inbound, let me click on edit. Then you would see that my schedule is always, you can schedule it that, for instance, only during after work hours or in work hours. You can create your own schedules on the left-hand side. I will talk about objects later on. The actual bandwidth you would like to have. I typically prefer to do percentages because it gives me a very fast and quick overview of how many percentages are still available. But if you want to, for example, really kill an application, a limited bandwidth, then you can just do, for example, 1 meg, but typically I would say 100% or 80, depending on you. Oversubscription is, and pay attention on the right side, everything's always explained, is if you go beyond 100%, then we will automatically calculate how much everybody can use. You can select if you want a dynamic virtual circuit. I do not use it very often, but it is a way to get a per host bandwidth allocation. And per host, we always act per host, so that difference is not big, but you can set a minimum and a maximum, which can be useful in some scenarios, typically in universities and so on. If you want to limit connections, and then the filter options on which object you want to filter. Even a direction is possible. Oh, I should have clicked OK, but that's just fine. So in this scenario, all traffic coming from all is all. If it's private or public, whatever, we will apply these rules. Peer-to-peer choke, it can only get maximum 3%, limited to 1%, recreational, all these applications. Top down, so if you want, for example, a more specific rule, let me say, create a new policy, tests HTTP rule, for example, doesn't really matter. I would give it place number 5, always optimize. Maybe that one I would like to discard. There is some reason that I want to discard a rule, and then I would say HTTP. And maybe somebody is causing issues and I want to discard it. So then you would see it's on top. So that rule will hit first, and then all the rest is neglected. If I would have put, let's say, it at, like it suggested, 210, reorder, that's basic firewall principles, then my rule would never hit because web contains HTTP and it will always be optimized. So important to put the rules in the right position. Just deactivating a rule, making it red. Changing policies, changing objects requires a restart of the optimizer. In quality of service, that means an immediate action. Benefits, well, if somebody is consuming all the bandwidth and nobody is able to work anymore, you can just create a rule, block that user, and everything is back to normal business. But for accelerated traffic, we will not apply immediately. Why? Because imagine you are downloading a PDF file from the file server. If you would click restart and we would restart that connection as well, then we would break the download and maybe corrupt the file. And also our acceleration options, we need to see the TCP three-way handshake to apply acceleration to all packets, which is very important. Because in the sync we flag the option 30 field and so that the Exinda on the other side knows that we are accelerating traffic. Important. So maybe open up a rule again. Yep. Edit. So this is a name. Typically, we will write in the name the percentages that we gave in the guaranteed and burst bandwidth. But pay attention. Voice, if it starts, it will be guaranteed 15% if it needs 15% and can burst up to 100% with a priority 1 being the highest. So it will always win because voice is very sensitive. If you go back to the rule base, you would see, for example, so all these first percentages are guaranteed. So if files is there, it will get 8%. It can burst to 100, but it has priority 5. So 1 will be first served. If there is no voice, and that is very important, especially compared to the next generation firewalls, this 15% is fully available for all other applications. This is not reserved. This is completely dynamic. But if it needs 15%, it will be guaranteed. There is no way around that, even with accelerated applications. And then talking about accelerated applications, this can only be applied on the outbound. Of course, if you need to set the flags on the outbound connection, and then we could see that files have the attribute of being accelerated and how on disk, which means that we do compression, deduplication, and cache the object. If you would only say compression, then there is no dedupe, there is no caching. It's just a compressed file that is sent over. None is only TCP accelerations, so window sizes. Now, so these are all the rules. Within these rules, we always use objects. We are objects oriented. So if I've shown you files, the rule of files, you'll see that we filter on the application file services. This is not an application. This is an application group, as you can see. And this first list is application groups, and then below are all the other applications. I already know by heart what is in file services because I installed quite a few Exinda appliances. If you do not know, then you can go to the application list and verify that for you, file services contains everything you want it to contain. And that's very important, what you want it to contain, because there was or is an engineering team that decides for us all, by default, the members of the group file services, which is this bunch of applications. I always edit and add print to this, because for me, print belongs to file services and is a very good protocol to accelerate. So I add print to this group because I think it belongs there. And then it's all up to you to decide to create a new group, to change the groups, remove them, delete them, whatever. It is not limited to 4. Each time you add a new application, you can add 4 more. for some reason somebody decided it's each time +4. You can also, like mentioned, filter on network objects. What I said, the Boston office, the branch offices. You remember in the reports that we had file servers or internet server. So all objects based on networks. Users and groups, if you tie in with Active Directory, for example. VLANs, application schedules, and all these different possibilities. Yeah, very important. For example, you have an in-house MySQL solution and you use a different kind of port range, or maybe HTTP is an easier one to show, HTTP in-house, whatever. You would use a layer 7 signature based on HTTP, but because you own that application, you could say, in HTTP, I will only look for content types. Content types is, for example, mine. Then we can filter on those different layer 7 applications within HTTP. I think if there are still or Lotus Notes, I think Lotus Notes has other options as well. So you do have quite a few options. So day 2, when you're at the customer, together with him, you can create this list of rules, policies to help him traffic shape his network. Very important, once again, when you've done this configuration, you restart your engine, everything is active, and I urge you to always go back to the real-time monitor, set show policies, and verify that your rules, FTP, are falling in the right policy that you created. Maybe you made an error, maybe your customer explained it differently, but you need to verify, because if SMTP would have fallen into inbound all, that's a bad decision. If, for example, files would have fallen into all, it only has 5% instead of the 8%, which is a big difference in these. So always verify that your rules are applied correctly. And then you can let it run for another week at your customer and come back to him and walk with him through all the advantages or disadvantages. Maybe call in between to ask him, is everything working? Maybe he'll go back to you and say, well, I think application, my backup is consuming too much bandwidth. Well, then you would say, go to your optimizer. Let me retake my test rule, test backup rule. Oh, yeah, it's because I changed the name. My graphs won't match up anymore, but that's just to show. I would say optimize. I would say put it on, I like percentages. I don't know. For example, 2% during the day, maximum of 50%, 6. But I would schedule it in work hours. It's 2 to 50%. Apply. I forgot to put it up there, of course. Then during work hours, which is this schedule, my backup will only get 2 to 50%. And then you could just say, for example, clone this rule, put it on number 2, full backup. Let's make it just so you understand what I'm doing. Put it on number 2. After work hours, it can get even 20%. It can burst to 100%. It has the same priority, doesn't really matter. And okay, don't pay attention to the, okay, the, that makes a lot of sense. Let's just put it at 10. And this then at after hours will have much more traffic possible for the backup rule. I know my application was HTTP, that it's just to show the benefit. So very intuitive way to create rules. You can just use an application, you can use a user, you can use an IP address, whatever you'd like to filter on. Maybe you say, uh, maybe your customer cannot tell you which application is using the file the help me the backup. He doesn't know the application, but he knows that it is main, or the source is the intranet server. So based on the IP address, you can achieve the same goal, for example. Very intuitive. Restart, and then everything should work out. And then when your customer is really happy and in week 3, you just pull the device out of the network so he starts complaining again. Just kidding. But this helps a lot in showing the benefit. And when the device is no longer there, they struggle again with taking control of the resources. And that's basically what we need to do. To go a bit on so the quality of service, that's all been, everything is in the same rule base. So shaping, prioritizing, and acceleration is in the same policy base. There's no need to look anywhere else. We only have some features to tweak the acceleration engine. We use a community, a TCP optimization. You could say that my scaling factor, I'm behind a 8 meg link, whatever. You can change the congestion control mechanism. These are tweaking options on acceleration. WAN memory is our deduplication and compression engine. For SMB connections, if they have signed connections, we need to be participating in the domain, in the Active Directory domain. So you can add it here. We can accelerate SSL servers. FYI, don't do it to public servers. Don't accelerate Facebook traffic. It makes no sense. You do not have the correct certificates, and the content is too dynamic. So the benefits is near to zero. But for example, if you have a HTTPS SharePoint server, it makes a lot of sense to install the certificate here because you own it, and then you can accelerate all the file transfers to the SharePoint server. Very easy. Edge cache is our single-sided cache, so a proxy server to cache internet-based content. I'm not the biggest fan of Edge cache. I think there are better products in the market. We did this for some universities because they wanted to. In my region, it's not widely spread or widely used. Pre-population, however, can be useful to warm the cache, for example, for SMB or HTTP during nighttime. When nobody is there, you can say, I already want to copy over my Microsoft Office files because tomorrow I need to install the new Office packet on the PCs. That can help you do those things. Diagnostics can be important if you need to drill down. So we have TCP dump on board, so you can packet capture all the interfaces you need. Of course, we have all the Linux log files as well. The maintenance, very important. We have a configuration file that we use to activate configuration. So you can download it, change it, and upload it and use it, or you can have multiple versions because you are testing something and just activate the one that you need. Import configuration, it's CLI based. Clustering is very possible. But what I wanted to show is a firmware update. We use 2 partitions, so you can upgrade partition 2 to the latest and greatest code. Boot partition 2, test your new firmware. If it's okay, just continue. If it's not okay, you do have the possibility to fall back to partition 1 on the older version. and then a set of tools on the appliance itself, typical tools like ping, traceroute, DNS lookup, but also the console, the IPMI connections, which is the ILO connection on HP, for example. And what I really like is the iPerf client and server. So if you have two Exindas, you start the server on one end, you just start it, and on the other end, you take the iPerf client, and that way you can actually test throughputs from end to end, which can be very useful to configure your appliance. And after all these things, which is the core of our appliance, that you help your customer, you can even go beyond that and say, hey, we have Solution Center, which is an improvement on the way that we report on applications. So I would say, for example, a custom application performance, I would like to see everything based on the application FTP. I would love to have more detail. So I create the report, and then you will see we will create a baseline for the application. It takes quite some time to get this baseline, but then you get a score on this application. You can see the benefits on FTP. On the WAN side, we only had 600 megs approximately. On the LAN side, it was almost 7 gig of traffic. Outbound, the same thing, how many benefits that we had. And this application performance score and metrics will be populated when the baseline has finished, of course. And so these are extras. These are very nice to have for some specific servers. It is very important to see if there are performance issues or not. So that is our solution. What do you think? Is it easy to understand? Do you think it's complicated to configure? Anything you want to ask? I'm here
Thanks
to listen.
for demo, Bob. It's something difficult to me to understand about virtual sockets and
Okay.
inbound and the outbound direction. It's kind of different from Riverbed.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, some questions from me. So
Yeah,
you
no.
mentioned that you have auto discovery option like in Riverbed, so you use TCP options to discover the remote appliance.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
we would add in the what we call a community is auto discovered. You could manually add something, but if you manually add a node, typically it means it's not auto discoverable, which typically means there is a firewall that strips one of the options. But it does that all by itself, and the way it does that is with the option field 30 or 230.
Okay, that's clear. So, and you also mentioned that you have CIFS signs optimization.
Yeah.
Do you support modern versions of Windows? So, for example, Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016 use SMB 3.1. Do you
No.
support?
So for now,
Not.
we pass SMB 3.1 by. So we do not extra optimize SMB 3.1.
Okay. The next question is about MAPI optimization. So MAPI is for email,
Yeah.
but in Windows environment, it HTTPS MAPI over HTTPS replaces it. So do you support such kind of traffic?
So
Optimizing.
yeah, MAPI encrypted, no. MAPI plain, yes. And MAPI over HTTPS. I'm little of, you make me wonder. It's been, I would tend to say there is no benefit in accelerating that on our solution.
Okay. What about optimization of real-time traffic? So, for example, if we have video conferencing or some learning systems.
Yeah.
Do you have some use cases about that? Because we have a customer who has an issue when
Mhm.
they make uh, remote learning systems and have some clients in remote branches. And for example, if they have 20 clients,
Mhm.
they all consume their bandwidth. So if one client consumes 1 megabit
Mhm.
per second, 20 clients consume 20. Do you have something for
Yeah.
optimizing
Th-
this kind of
That that
traffic?
that that's where our uh, DNA of quality of service benefits over the one for Riverbed. The way we handle these sessions, of course, we do not accelerate these sessions because it's real time. It would come out all differently. But the way we handle those sessions is to share the maximum that we can share on all these applications with priority and shaping. And we see, for example, I had a customer here in Belgium that did some testing. So he had a connection on, he bought two internet connections of 200 meg because he wanted to have enough. I said, that's not necessary. You're just wasting money away to the ISP. I forced it down to 20 meg and there are 50 people in the office. He called me and said, my Sky for Business is better now. I said, that's because we prioritize and shape and fair share that bandwidth. And the way we handle that is something we noticed that we are greatly benefiting over Riverbed. And it's very difficult to explain it technically for me as well, because it's really the bits and bytes on that matter. But what I would suggest is demo it or proof of concept it. You will notice that it helps a lot. And it doesn't cost any money to do a POC. So why not give it a try?
Okay. So in terms of RDP traffic or Citrix, you also can prioritize them,
Yeah.
not
So what, yeah, indeed.
separate.
So what we had was a customer, I think it was in the US, who has Citrix deployed completely on, I think they had 60 sites something. So it's a bigger customer. Citrix deployed completely, also to save bandwidth, of course, because that's one of the reasons Citrix is still very popular, is to save bandwidth, whatever. But they also had a voice over IP system. And that voice over IP system was struggling resources or fighting resources with the Citrix connections. So our quality of service, our shaping engine, made it possible for both of them to run simultaneously on those links, to fair share that bandwidth, because we limit the top users to go a bit down and give the little ones a little bit more. Easily said, but it helped a lot.
Okay. And do you have some kind of traffic quota if we want to limit some user,
Yeah. So
for example, 400 megabytes?
what we can do, we have quota management. So we can say, based on uh, amount of traffic or time, say that if you, in this scenario, if you have on a daily basis, the counter is put back to zero. So in one day, if he downloads 250 meg of traffic, then he will be dropped into a rule that is limiting his traffic to 4 kilobits or something.
That's nice. For example, if I give you a case, imagine an oil rig somewhere far away,
Yeah,
and they have their employees, and except of business application, they could run their maybe Skype to
yeah,
talk to their relatives and so on. But can we limit this traffic to some kind of megabytes
yeah,
per
indeed.
user?
Yeah, indeed. That is
Yeah.
completely correct. So that's an FYI, we are very present in, I think we also have an Ulrich customer, can't remember his name, but we are very present in the satellite environments. Uh, Even in military environments, all satellite links, our partner, for example, Telefonica TIWS, worldwide, every satellite link of Telefonica is also powered by an Exinda. And why? That's exactly what you are looking for on the oil rig. It's satellite links are expensive to use, so we really need to shape and save as much as possible. And typically, I think it's a dredging company in the Netherlands called Van Oort. So they have both Riverbed and Exinda on the ships. So we work together. But for the for all the people on the ships, they are allowed to connect with their phones, their iPads, and computers to go to the internet. But when the captain needs something, he has total priority. So we made a rule with his IP address because it's a fixed IP address in that scenario that if he needs something, he gets the bandwidth he needs. And then all the rest has fair sharing and has limits and quota management in place for internet usage.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
And about deployment options. So you have a breached mode.
Yeah.
Do you support? And I've seen that you have WCCP option.
Yeah, indeed. We do support WCCP. We support span mirroring or port mirroring, sorry, or span ports. But then it's only for monitoring purposes, of course. WCCP is supported. We prefer inline, of course, because that's where you can handle the most things. But WCCP is valid.
Okay. And do you have hardware bypass on your NICs?
Every NIC is hardware bypassed. So if it's fiber bypass. If it's copper bypass. We do not sell one single solution without a hardware bypass.
Okay. And do you have virtual appliances?
We have virtual appliances certified for ESX or VMware, uh, Microsoft hypervisor, Citrix Zen server. We support KVM, uh, and that's all the big ones, right? Yeah, that's it.
Okay. One more question. We had a customer with some specific case. They are a part of a European company with headquarters in Europe, and they have a branch office in some region of Russia. And sometimes European headquarters pushes some updates to IT systems placed in that branch office, and they consume all the bandwidth. So I guess with Exinda, we can do an inbound course. So
Yeah,
we can limit some kind of traffic originating from
it's
this waters.
exactly the rule that I show with the backup scenario. It's almost the same. So during work hours, limit that push, and because this is inbound to your office in Russia, limited to maximum 50%. And at nighttime, they can push as much as they want. They can have full access.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that maybe I didn't say, which because so software updates can of course be accelerated on the outbound, of course, but we also have the HTML response that we can return. For example, if you say bandwidth, if somebody goes to a specific website which is on the maintenance mode, then you can send them a response, or if they do things that are not allowed, you can HTTP redirect them to another service as well. All of your
Okay.
likings.
Uh, and one more question about in Riverbed, they called this visibility mode. So do you act like a real proxy? So what IP addresses would we see on after the WAN link, after the traffic exits
Yeah,
WAN interface?
indeed. We operate at layer 2, so no IP addresses are involved.
Okay. Okay. But I guess there must be control session between two appliances.
Yeah, those are handled by the management interface, which of course has an IP address, which is, of course is layer 3. So typically what I do and what I suggest all of my partners, customers, whatever. So this is, for example, the configuration network settings of this appliance. Uh, this appliance has 4 interfaces. We activated bridge 2, which takes HD 2 and 3 in a bridge mode, just in and out. And that's what I suggest is we activate the management on a single interface outside of the bridge. What you can do is add a IP address to the bridge as well. So then the bridge will handle all the management stuff. But imagine that one of the 2 links is down, then you're unable to reach that device anymore because the bridge is inactive. So that's why we suggest put everything in a management interface, that even if there's something wrong with this side, you could still you can still reach the appliance from the inside or from the outside, depending on your configuration. And this one will then handle all the layer 3 related items. And
Okay,
indeed,
so
the synchronization of cached files and whatever is done by this IP address.
mhm. Okay, so we will see actual IP addresses of servers and clients if
Yeah,
we have some firewalls
yeah,
and so on.
yeah,
Okay.
indeed.
And one more question. I've noticed that after each policy change, we have to restart optimization service. That means that all sessions there that are currently flowing through the appliance will be reset.
No, no,
Is that
that's what I
true?
explained. You can restart the optimizer as much as you want. The What happens is that we will immediately apply the quality of service. So the queuing is redone, but the session therefore has not been terminated. You can continue working. No PC will be impacted, and that's why I also said for accelerated connections, we will only apply the new accelerated policy after he reinitiates the three-way handshake. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, we would, like you said, terminate the session and we would cause more issues than we would fix issues.
That's a difference from Riverbed because when the service restart is triggered, they do a bypass test. So link is going down for a second and then goes up.
Yeah, we
So
don't
they
do that
might.
because then, yeah, we impact too much then.
Mhm.
There is one, if it's a disadvantage, I don't know. There's just one thing you need to know. If you are testing acceleration, you must be sure that your uh, file transfer is a new session because of the explanation I just did. It's just something to pay attention to. If you're at your customer and you want to show the benefits of acceleration, you need to really stop the file share on the PC, renegotiate the file share, and do the download again. That's why you don't at Riverbed you don't need to, because it's the Riverbed that kills the session. We don't kill it. You need to gracefully stop it on the machine and do it again. But you need to remember it, because you would say, I changed it and it's still not working. It's because the session is still going through. Because Windows, as we all know, if I do it, I'm on a Mac. If I do it on my Mac, I have fewer issues. But Windows tends to keep the file shares open in background to the file server to win in time, for example.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But it's
So
just
that's
something
all
to
my
remember. It's not impacting.
Okay, nice. So I've got no more questions. So if we have a customer with specific needs and your solution will fit their needs, can we request some virtual machines to do a POC?
Yeah, you can do virtual machines to do a POC. We can ship. What I typically do with partners as well is to get them to NFR, or what we call fast boxes, to their office so they can install themselves at the customer those boxes and appliances to win some time to get acquainted with the products. These are very a cheaper way, and you can install whatever license you need because it's an NFR solution. So we don't really charge you for the license. We only charge the hardware. But then you have something that you can immediately use because a virtual solution is sometimes very useful, but not always the possibility, because in the remote sites, typically there is no virtual infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
And those are small boxes, so it could be possible. But that's something that Maxime and I can help you with if that's a process. If you need a virtual solution, just send me an email. I'll send you the link to download it. After you download it, today, normally, since you are a partner, you can create your own 60-day license. But we are in the process of migrating all the tools to the GFI portfolio, of course. So that portal to create licenses is temporarily unavailable. So you just install the machine. You will get a serial number. Send that serial number to me, and I will create the license for you for 60 days.
Okay, that's fine.
It's just a little bit more work for me, but that doesn't really matter. It's just a license, so that only takes 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. And what about best practices? I guess when you create a new virtual circuit and all these rules are created by default, so they are considered as best practices. Do
Indeed.
I need to tune them?
Indeed. No,
or
I will be honest. Each POC, I just start with the plain and simple wizard, unless, and that's very important, you need to discuss, and that's why I say you need to let the device run for a couple of days before installing the default policies, because to make sure there is no surprise in there. And unless, of course, if your customers, as of day one, says, for example, I'm already struggling with Salesforce, then you would create a rule for Salesforce to give it higher priority, if you understand that.
Okay. So, thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Answers.
If there's anything else, if you have another question, don't hesitate to email us. Put Anastasia in copy, put me in copy, and Maxime maybe, that the chain knows what to do. And if you want a virtual solution to test now in your office, just drop me an email and I will get you the links.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and feel free to reach out, and I would say have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
I will try to get the recording to you by file share, whatever, and then you can review it if you want. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for attending, and have a great weekend.
Да, спасибо, Боб. Даня, тоже спасибо за уделенное время. Но тогда все коммуникации можно через меня проводить, и ссылку на запись тоже я направлю. И если будет понимание, что вот те заказчики, о которых вы спрашивали, говорили, что им через пилот, то тоже, как Боб сказал, мы готовы предоставить.
Хорошо, да. Я увидел там стороны, что можно сделать, и, соответственно, если появится какой-то запрос, мы тогда обратимся.
Да, еще у нас Боб, скорее всего, сможет приехать в марте в Россию. То есть, если будет какой-то вопрос по показу решения заказчику или вашим коллегам, то можем непосредственно приехать на встречу.
Хорошо. Тогда обратите внимание по датам, вы напишите, может, там
Хорошо,
время,
да.
И тогда встретимся.
Обязательно.
Что, наверное, тогда все. Спасибо большое за
приглашение. Да, все, но чуть попозже я тогда скину всю информацию и еще раз поговорим варианты взаимодействия.
Хороших выходных.
Спасибо. Вам тоже.
Всего доброго, до свидания.
До свидания.